This is my August fish room tour, a monthly video series where I track the progress of my fish room. So starting with my largest tank, the 40 gallon, and there has been a few changes. Last month I mentioned how my pearl gourami had babies and they were constantly building bubble nests in this particular aquarium. The babies do seem to have all been eaten by their parents and tank mates now, but the constant breeding behaviour caused the pearl gourami to harass their tank mates. It wasn't fair because all the other fish in this aquarium seemed to be scared and bunched up in one corner, so I ended up giving the pearl gourami to one of my friends who has a 240 litre tank that's around 60 US gallons if I remember correctly, and it's just got pearl gourami and Siamese algae eaters in there. I moved my honey gourami up to the 40 gallon tank and everything seems to have settled in now, and everything does seem to be a lot calmer than when the pearls were in there. The Corydoras have been constantly laying eggs everywhere in this tank the last couple of weeks, and judging by the look of the females, they are full of eggs again, so ready for round 2. My Siamese algae eater tends to leave the eggs alone once they are freshly laid, but as soon as they get that fungus or algae or whatever it is that grows on them onto the eggs, he devours them as if it's a treat. The harlequin rasboras seem to have started spawning this week as well, and I'm pretty sure I saw a female laying eggs on some of the plants a few days ago, but I doubt any of the fry will survive. The neon and cardinal tetras in here really haven't been up to much, to be honest. They just tend to keep themselves to themselves, but I have noticed the last week or so they tend to prefer to stick to the right hand side of the tank for some reason. Jumping across to my 29 gallon guppy tank, and this is a relatively new setup, but all of the plants are growing in nicely. Most of the guppies seem to be doing fine, but I did lose one of my oldest guppies recently. The tail of the guppy that had fin rot is starting to slowly grow back, but this particular guppy is acting different compared to how he did before the treatment, so I'm not sure if the medication has caused some issues with the fish. My endler guppy hybrids came out of quarantine as well, and I added them to this tank, and so far they do seem to be settling in, but they definitely like to chase my regular guppies around. One of the endlers keeps freaking me out as it has pale dots down its back, and I keep thinking that it's ick, but I am getting used to it now. It's not really freaking me out that much anymore. I've moved a few shrimp over to this tank as well, and I've seen a few of them molt without issue now, so I am confident that the tank's fine for them, so I will be moving some rejects from my breeding tanks over to these this coming month. Moving down to my 12 gallon tank, and it currently contains my chili rasboras and one of my Betta fish. I will publish a dedicated video on my experiences of keeping chili rasboras with Betta fish soon, but in short there hasn't been any problems. Cooley the Betta has been in his own tank for around 6 months with shrimp, and I've never seen him eat a shrimp or even show any aggression to them at all, so I decided to try him in this tank when his old tank started to fail. I have noticed that his activity levels have been dropping the last couple of months, and someone made this comment on one of my videos about long-finned bettas slowing down as they get older, and I've seen a few other people talking about that too. I've picked up this smaller 5 gallon tank from Pets at Home, and I want to build this out over the coming week as a dedicated tank just for Cooley to try and make him as comfortable as possible. I am currently thinking of moving the 3D printed moss shelves from my cherry shrimp breeding tank over to that specific Betta fish tank, so I can give him little shelves at different areas of the tank that he can rest on if he wants a break when swimming around. My chili rasboras will probably be moved up to my 40 gallon tank, as I've kept them with most of the fish in that aquarium before without issue. Then I can rescape this 12 gallon tank as the moss is getting out of hand and it's causing some problems for the other plants in here, and I'm planning on trying to keep white cloud mountain minnows or potentially rice fish in here once it's rescaped. Moving on to my 8 gallon Betta tank, and unfortunately Stitch ended up with tail rot this month. I know he may look a little bad, but to be honest he looks so much better than he did a couple of weeks back, and his activity levels are pretty much back to normal now. With any luck he will make a full recovery and his tail and the wound on his back will return to normal. I do want to make a dedicated video on my experiences of treating tail rot in bettas, because I've been documenting it with my phone every day, because when I was researching it, a lot of it just seemed to be opinion rather than people who've actually done it, and a lot of the advice contradicted each other. Right now I am spending a little more time every day watching his aquarium and looking for any signs of a potential secondary infection or anything like that, but thankfully everything does seem to be going in the right direction. So moving across to my shrimp rack and starting with my cherry shrimp tank. I did have an issue earlier this month where all of the shrimp were hanging from the floating plants in this tank. I added an air stone to the tank and things went back to normal, but I did have some people on TikTok comment saying that they had the same issue with their shrimp tanks here in the UK and they thought it was due to warmer weather. It's been around 2 weeks since it happened now and there doesn't seem to be any ongoing issues with the tank, but there are some warm days coming up soon, so I will be keeping a close eye on this aquarium. I've lost count of the number of saddled and buried females in this tank now, and I already have a couple of batches of new baby shrimp swimming around. There's at least 2 sets of babies in here, with one being absolutely tiny and difficult to see, and the other one's probably a week or 2 old and they are growing at a decent pace. I am going to try and move some of the lower grade shrimp over to my 40, 29 and 12 gallon tanks this month to try and improve the quality of the breeding line in this aquarium and prevent overcrowding. Moving down to my Bloody Mary tank, and I know that this one looks like a jungle, but the more I look at it, the more I actually like the way this tank looks. My initial idea for this tank was to let the pearlweed grow to roughly the stage it's at right now, and then I'd cut the middle of it out, leaving a carpet, a background and the 2 sides. It is a pain to see the shrimp in here due to there being so many hiding spots, but the shrimp actually really seem to enjoy it and there's so many grazing areas for feeding in here. I haven't actually been able to get an exact count of the number of Bloody Mary shrimp that I have, but I did count 8 of them feeding on a pellet that I dropped in a couple of days back. It's surprisingly difficult to see and I can't tell for sure because the pearlweed restricts the light, but I think that this might be a buried female with eggs, so hopefully I'll have babies over the next couple of weeks. I also noticed this little guy in here a couple of days ago and I have no idea what species of fish it is, but the egg must have been stuck on the Salvinia floating plants when I moved it over from one of my other tanks. There were an absolute ton of water fleas in here that have suddenly magically disappeared, so I'm guessing that's what he's feeding on, but there's no predators for fish fry in this tank, so I'm going to start adding some Hikari first bites to see if I can get it to grow and find out what species of fish it is. Moving down to my orange Neocaridina tank, and unfortunately things do seem to be going the same way as my previous 2 orange Neocaridina colonies. I'm pretty sure that I started with 12 shrimp, but I think there's only 5 of them left in here and it just seems to be the way orange Neos go for me. My last 2 orange Neo colonies failed and it does look like this one's having consistent issues as well. I'm not sure if I want to move these oranges over to my 40 or 29 gallon tank and just add another colour of shrimp in here to breed them, or potentially get more oranges and hopefully get them to work. From what I can tell, all 5 of the remaining shrimp in here are saddled females, so there's not going to be any new babies without adding some males to the tank. As much as I would like an orange Neo colony, I'm not sure it's worth the money after 3 failed attempts, so I am thinking of leaning more into the white snowball shrimp and giving those a try. Moving down to my yellow Neocaridina shrimp tank, and things have been going really well in this one. The plant growth has been slow, but most of the plants in here are different types of Eliocaris, which does take time to grow. In all honesty though, the shrimp don't seem to mind. There's plenty of saddled and buried females in here too, so the shrimp do seem to be breeding without issue. I have seen a couple of baby shrimp in here over the last week or 2, but there's so many hiding spots for a single batch of babies to hide that it's difficult to get accurate numbers on the population. The current buried females in the tank should have their babies within the next week or 2, so with any luck I'll have a steadily expanding shrimp colony of my yellow Neos again. So moving on to this, and this particular tank is Cooley the Betta's old tank and I decided to repurpose it. The red plants in the old setup failed and started to cause some water parameter problems, and I got tired of doing daily water changes, so I tried to tease the red plants out of the substrate to remove them, but unfortunately I pulled some of the soil into the water column and decided to just scrap the tank. The Newscape is currently into its 3rd week of cycling and it's using a modular wallstad setup. The only topsoil in this tank is in the bottom of the plant pot for the Limnophilia sessiliflora, so if the plants do have issues and fail or have any problems, I can literally just remove the plant pot, replant it as required and put it back without scrapping the full tank. So far the cycle is going as expected. I'm just dosing the tank with Dr. Tim's and I should be able to stock it sometime this month. I will probably just add some type of shrimp to this tank, but right now I can't decide between dark blue Neos and green jade Neos, but I am pretty much settled on either of those two. Finally, we have my shrimp jar, and things have been going so well in this jar. I'm really happy with it. There's 2 sets of babies in here already, and I think I saw one of the females buried with eggs in very early development because they were very small. This jar is just under 2 US gallons, so I will be moving some of the shrimp over to my yellow Neo tank this month if possible, just to prevent any issues with overcrowding in there. I have been sitting and watching this jar a lot the last month, and I ended up caving and ordering another jar of this size with the same light for another shrimp jar setup that I'll get set up sometime this month. Anyway guys, that brings the update to an end. Thanks for watching and have a good day.